Today's video is going to be a little bit out of my norm. This is going to be a little bit more of a vulnerable video, and as you can see in the title, I'm going to be talking about how belief work has personally transformed my life. Now, if you guys have been here for a while, you've heard probably bits and pieces of my life, and I hear a lot of people online saying things like, "Don't bring up the old story." Don't bring up previous negative things that you've gone through because you no longer want to relate to it. And in my own personal approach, I find that when we have to avoid something or when we're afraid to bring something up, that's because there's parts of us that still identify with it, that are afraid of it recreating in our current experience. And so for myself, I don't mind talking about the things that I previously went through because I've put in a considerable amount of mindset work to move on from those things, no longer relate to them, and no longer fear them recreating in my life. Before I get into all of this, I just want to put a trigger warning here. I'm going to talk about some deep experiences that I had foundationally and how that shaped me and how I used belief work to transform different areas of my life. Some of the topics may be heavy, so if you get easily triggered, I would say this is, I'm just putting this warning here. You may not want to watch this video. Okay. For those of you that are willing to stay, I want to use this as an opportunity to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and to set an example that no matter what you've gone through, that doesn't have to continue to be your experience. And oftentimes, I think when people see me, they might assume that I had a relatively easy upbringing. Not everybody, but my channel has come about because of the adversity that I faced and my relentless pursuit to not settle, to not allow negative experiences to define me or define my life or the things that I'm able to create within my life. And that starts internally. Who we're being, what we believe, the identity we're existing in is creating our experiences. It's creating our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, our perceptions, how we're responding to life, and how we're organizing ourselves. And so we always have the ability to choose to organize ourselves differently. And in that, I've realized if you can actually discern what's going on and make the proper adjustments, you actually have the power to turn situations around and create desirable results or fix relationships or move on from relationships or excel scholarly in your career or build your dream physique. Me personally, I've done each of those things. I took myself from a like 1.2 GPA to a 3.7, 3.8, got into my dream university with a full ride scholarship. I persisted through so many challenges in a relationship where at one point we lived quite literally on the opposite side of the country from one another, was able to turn that situation around, and we traveled the world living in Thailand and Hawaii. And I'm going to explain later on in this video why I decided to end that relationship. I transformed my physique. Okay, as you guys can see, okay, I've had quite a transformation. And obviously, I've built my career from the ground up. And so, not that you need me as evidence, but I really strive to set the example of what I'm talking about by the example I have within my life and the results I have in my life. And so, again, I think it's important to start at what I initially went through so people can understand it's not that I'm anyone special and I'm not sharing my successes in an effort to gloat or to seem better than anybody, but more as an example that if I can do it, anybody can do it. And it did take discipline. It took a relentless pursuit to stabilize my nervous system and to really place the focus on myself and build different beliefs and choose to respond to life differently and organize myself differently. But anybody can do that. And so, yeah, I'm going to open up and just share some of my foundational experiences. because who I am today is not who I was meant to be. I created this version of myself from the ground up. And so to illustrate that point, um, I grew up in Southern California, and financially, my family was well off and fine because my mother was adopted and her adoptive parents died in a house fire when she was 16. She happened to escape. And so she ended up getting a trust fund from that. And so my mother had two wounds. She was adopted, and then she also lost that adoptive family. And it wasn't the best household. My father also came from a very chaotic household. And so their relationship was very tumultuous, to put lightly. I also have a half brother and a half sister. And so growing up, they were constantly getting into trouble, struggling with drug addiction, struggling with getting in trouble with the law. Me personally, I was always kind of like a angel child, I guess. I didn't want to get in trouble. Um, but I frequently came home to fights, screaming and yelling, being used as a pawn. My father was very mentally, emotionally manipulative and sometimes got physical. And so originally, as a child, uh, I think my very, very formative years were relatively peaceful. But as I, turned about 6 or 7 years old, my mother got injured and ended up tearing her meniscus and ACL, and the first doctor messed up the surgery. So she had 13 knee surgeries and two total knee replacements. And so from about, I don't even know, maybe 5 or 6 up until I was like 10 or 11, I can't remember the dates exactly. She was constantly in and out of the hospital. And obviously that affected her ability to connect. A lot of the When I look back at my childhood, financially I was provided for, but emotionally I was neglected for various reasons that I think, looking back now, my mother did her best. My father is a different story, okay, which is fine. Again, I've come to peace with it. Um, but once my mother got injured, things took a very rapid decline. Um, and I remember as a kid really noticing my father just treating my mother in such terrible ways, like getting upset at her for not being able to work because she was injured, and just a lot of fractions and frictions within my family dynamic. And my brother and sister were, again, constantly getting in trouble, so constantly being pulled in and out of my life. So just a lot of chaos that was occurring, all throughout my childhood. And by the time I hit being a teenager, um, I realized I was gay, and my performance in school really dropped. Um, I wasn't able to come home and study because every single day there was a problem, there was a fight, there was yelling and screaming, whether it be issues with my siblings, which they would oftentimes also live at their other father's house, or it was issues between my parents. And as I progressed into my teenage years, I started to get severely bullied for being gay. So not only was I experiencing chaos in my household, which was great, and forms of emotional neglect, partially due to my mother having surgery, but also the drama that my parents were constantly wrapped up in. Um, I also started, experiencing bullying. Now, I was always a relatively popular kid. I always got along with the girlies, and I think that's why I gear so much content towards the girls. And looking back, I think guys bullied me for being gay because maybe I got along with girls so much and they were a little bit jealous. Not everybody, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I was always relatively popular with girls. But I didn't perceive it that way. And so I had one really, really negative example of a man in my household, and then Before I realized I was gay and all this happened, I was playing in sports, I did Boy Scouts, I was involved, with guys, but my whole worldview of men really changed and it severely impacted me, to the point where I felt very uncomfortable around guys unless I was attracted to them and I knew they were gay. I also, actually, before this, I walked in on a family member attempting to take their own life. So again, just a lot of chaos. Okay, a lot of chaos in terms of like no emotional warmth, no consistent attention on me, not a lot of affection, chaos, and then pressure from society as well too. And I'm 31, so when I was a teenager, this was back in like 2007, 2008, 2009. People were not as accepting of gay people, at least where I lived, as they are now. And I know that's even better than what people experienced in the early 2000s and like 90s. But, I came out at 13 years old and just decided to be fully honest with who I was and I experienced quite a bit of backlash. Um, to fast forward, okay, into I want to say late teens, maybe early 20s. There was also a situation where my sister attempted to take her own life and was successful at doing it. And I happened to be there with my family in the hospital watching her take her last breath. Um, so again, just a lot of very heavy circumstances that I experienced. And at that point, I had already seen my father treat my mother so terribly, and I had seen how such negative ways of operating impacted my family in so many various ways. And so when that occurred with my sister, I hit a point where I decided enough was enough. I actually forced my mother to leave the relationship she had with my father. And I spent the early part of my 20s living with her in a one-bedroom apartment and attempting to rebuild our lives. And in comes mindset work. Now, I want to say, even when I was in my teenage years, I was making vision boards, I was doing gratitude lists. I had understood manifestation to a very surface level point. And I was beginning to cultivate hobbies or habits to establish a better self-image and way of viewing myself and way of talking to myself and planning goals because in the environment that I grew up in, nobody really asked me what I wanted and nobody really encouraged me and nobody really paid attention to me from a scholarly sense. That's why my grades were not really that good. I obviously graduated high school, um, but I struggled in so many different ways. I always had the desire to be fit. I always had the desire to be educated. I always had the desire to have a healthy relationship and to be successful, but I had no idea what those things meant or what they actually look like. And I had no reference point. I mean, yes, my family was financially well off, but me personally, because there was so much neglect, I didn't have the tools or the understanding for how to create that with myself or for myself. And so when I decided to essentially tell my mother, look, this is really bad. You got to go. This needs to end. This is not okay. Um, I eventually put a restraining order on my father. And again, really spent the early part of my 20s going to school, building up my mindset. And at that point, I didn't understand belief work to the degree that I do now. So there's two ways to adjust our beliefs. There's a physical approach, and then there's the mental approach, which is what I talk about on my channel. The physical approach is typically much more difficult. And so essentially, I was in a position where I had to go to school and I had no choice but to succeed. And I remember in those moments, I would go meet with my professors and I felt so stupid because I would be like, I literally don't know how to study. Okay, like I really need help. And I decided to do biochemistry to prove to myself that I was smart enough that I could. put my mind to something and I could get good grades and I could overcome challenges, even though it was, it was a major to choose. Okay. It's definitely a major to choose. Um, but the physical approach that I took, essentially, I had no option to run away. So I had to come face to face with my failures every single day and apply myself. And through applying myself, I started to produce new results that served as evidence to new beliefs. And I remember I convinced myself that I developed a photographic memory, and then I did. I convinced myself I was a straight A student. I would write the grades that I got for the semester down on the first week. And so I was doing a lot of things where I was living in the end without knowing it, but I had no mindset work to really take me there. I just had to come face to face with my failures every single day and not let them serve as evidence to my inability. And what happened is I became very, very proficient very quickly. And I did get straight A's, sometimes B's here and there, but I completely transformed because I didn't allow for my failures to serve as evidence to beliefs I no longer wanted to identify with. This is typically a very difficult approach for people because when they come face to face with their failures and it serves as evidence to their beliefs, it's very triggering. The only reason why I was able to persist through this, in my opinion, is because I had no choice, at least in my mind at that moment. Um, I was working and going to school and, contributing for rent and really trying to be there for my mother. And so for me, even though things were scary and felt difficult, giving up wasn't an option. And so I was able to build new beliefs, even without doing the mindset work through physically putting in the work to prove new ways of identifying to myself through the results that I produced. And so as time went by, I really, really dove into mindset work. And looking at my history with my family, I came to recognize that there were so many patterns that were unfolding. I didn't really exactly understand them, but I knew it had to do with something inside of me, also with the things that I was creating within my life. Because at that point, I had no problem getting a committed relationship. I've never had a problem with commitment. It was the dynamic that formed. Either I would push people away, and I would sabotage a relationship, or I would just get caught up in toxic cycles. And so this really affected me because I realized I'm putting in all this work to develop myself professionally, but what's the point of creating professional success if I don't have a family or a relationship or a partnership or somebody to actually share that with? And I also want to say here too, I also had kind of a little bit of a hard time getting close to people because throughout my childhood, I probably moved 8 or 9 times. So every time I got close to people, they were kind of yanked away from me. So like my childhood was a perfect concoction of so many different things that could occur that like just negatively impacted me, right? Like I at one point thought there's no point in opening up or being vulnerable or getting close to anybody because they're not going to stick around anyways. I mean, I always had friends, but they were very surface level friendships. And so as my life got better and the circumstances with my mother got better and we rebuilt our life, I took a pretty long hiatus and forced myself, after seeing what I could do with my education, I sat down for about maybe 2 years and read every book I could think of on mindset. And I came to realize that there were two really big components that affect somebody and their ability to sustain results within their life. And it had to do with nervous system. So what somebody's nervous system had normalized, as well as their foundational experiences and the belief system that they hold subconsciously. And once I began to recognize this, that's where I really turned my focus career-wise to helping other people overcome self-sabotage, building healthier beliefs, no longer perpetuating negative patterns within their life because I had seen how it totally disrupted my family, but also played out personally for myself. Fitness-wise, I was never able to achieve my fitness goals. Relationship-wise, I already explained what occurred. School-wise, I did turn that around, but I knew what it felt like to want something and to see it come into your life and not be able to sustain it. That's why I made a video the other day explaining how to master your mind. Because if we're operating from subconscious belief systems that aren't congruent with our conscious desires, you're going to see that you begin to manifest behaviors and ways of operating that really sabotage the things you want to create. Or you have unhealthy beliefs that are just drawing you towards unhealthy situations to confirm those deeper beliefs true as well too. Whatever option it is, we don't want either of them. And so again, on my own personal journey, as I began to really understand what's at play here, that is what birthed my channel. And for me, through all of the things that I've been through, I really genuinely only use nighttime affirmations, daily meditation, and nervous system regulation to change my identity. And as I explained at the beginning of this video, what that resulted in was maybe the schooling, okay, was more of a physical approach, but definitely how I operate in relationships changed. Uh, I no longer have those anxious tendencies, worry, fearful, doubtful thoughts. I'm able to normalize the dynamics that I want. I'm able to say no and uphold boundaries and consistently set an example of knowing who I am and what I deserve without holding on to my past experiences or fearing that those things are going to recreate and projecting that onto somebody. With my career, sustaining success was something that I struggled with, especially at the beginning. Um, the beginning of my YouTube channel, I remember when I first got like 1,000 subscribers, I got so freaked out by it that I think I like closed my channel. I subconsciously sabotaged, and I had to work through so much mindset work to allow myself to be seen and allow myself to be successful and embrace the success and really step into my confidence and knowing I know what I'm talking about and I know how to help people and I'm confident with what I'm doing. And obviously, as you can see, my channel has grown. With my body, I've completely transformed that. I really put a lot of mindset work into the relationship I had with food, my nervous system regulation, working out, seeing myself as somebody that can create their desired physique, overcoming challenges, remaining consistent, and remaining disciplined. And so for myself, this is why I say belief work is so powerful because with all the experiences that I foundationally went through, I would not be that, I'm not supposed to be this person. I'm not. And the only reason why I am this person today is because of the belief work that I've done and the focus on nervous system regulation. It allowed for me to transform my relationships and how I approach relationships, my body, my career. And again, I'm not going to say school because I took more of a physical approach, but I think when somebody is looking at creating their dream life, those are the main things that they're really looking at, right? Their relationship that they have with money, their romantic relationships, their body, meeting their needs and wants, and creating a life that they love and being able to be vulnerable and seen and authentic at all points. And that's why I think it's important for me to make this video to really embody that, to really show the authenticity and show up as an example that no matter what you've been through, you can overcome it if you apply yourself. You can create specific results. You can create your desired dream life, and it may require you to, and it's going to, not may, it's going to require you to step into a version of yourself that is fearless and decides who you are and embodies that and makes the decisions congruent with that identity, regardless of how people feel. I don't think, putting a restraining order on my dad was not the easiest thing to do. But from a self-respect standpoint and from a family value standpoint, when I stepped into that version of myself, it was a necessary component. It was a necessary manifestation that I had to do in order to uphold a boundary within my family for my mother when she wasn't powerful enough or strong enough or had enough self-belief to do that for herself. And I think this is why I advocate so much for women on my channel because I had such a negative example of what an insecure, unhealed man can do to a woman. And so I'm very protective of women in that sense. But I also realize that, men deserve fair and equal treatment as well too. And so I strive to widen my message, and maybe in ways I still need to work on that. I'm never going to claim to be perfect. Um, but I do strive to widen my message to reach men as well too, and to show that I advocate for healthy balance dynamics for everybody. And so the last thing that I want to talk about today is why I decided to end my previous relationship. And I'm not going to get into specific details because I don't think it's necessary. And to be honest, I ended that relationship because I really outgrew it. And Adam is a lovely, amazing person. There was never any cheating, infidelity. He was always committed to me. And when I ended the relationship, it was actually very sad because that day he was making a vision board for a life that he saw we could have together. He was fully invested in the relationship. But at that point, we had 4 years together and overcame so many circumstances, and I became exhausted. And I was still kind of holding on to previous things that had occurred, and my body started rejecting him, not wanting to talk to him. And I was holding on to resentments and I was voicing this. But I think because I had done so much mindset work and overcame so many things within that relationship, I hit a point where I didn't want to do the mindset work anymore. I didn't want to have to put in the conscious effort to move past those things I was holding on from. And I wanted to go more in the direction of taking everything that I learned from that relationship and moving forward and creating a relationship with somebody else where I don't have that history that I have to work through because I grew so much and I understood, I really wanted to use it more like this was really great. I care about you as a person. I want you to be successful, but I'm not willing to persist any longer. And it was sad. I'm not going to lie. It's sad, especially when you have 4 years with somebody and they don't want the relationship to end. And he was doing anything he could to, rectify the situation. And again, I will never say anything bad about him because he really did love me and really cared about me and wanted to make it work. But I got to a point where I realized like it's not fair to me and it's not fair to you. If I'm not happy, if I feel like my wants and needs aren't being met or I'm holding on to particular things, then me hiding that because you care about me so much isn't fair to you because I'm not going to be able to show up for you in the ways that you deserve. And so that's why I chose to end that relationship. And to be honest, when I originally ended it, I thought, you know what, we'll just give this some space. And maybe like, if we just have some space, I'll be able to process things and maybe things will come back together. Um, and again, I'm not going to go into personal details of what was said or what was done because it was not always sunshine and rainbows, but I will say dominantly, we had a very good relationship. We experienced a lot together. It was very beautiful. We overcame so many challenges together, so many circumstances, family getting involved, people's opinions, obviously being on the internet as well too, um, living across the country from one another, the military. I mean, there were so many circumstances that got turned around and so much success and being able to persist and create a different dynamic. But ultimately, again, I'm not going to force myself to stay in something that I felt like I outgrew. And, you know, we broke up, and I want to say for about 2 or 3 months, I was just kind of entertaining different guys because, to be honest, by the time I decided to break up with him, I had already done quite a bit of processing and realized that I was going to make that decision and kind of process the breakup before it had even happened. And that's why, like, that was another reason. Like, I'm not going to sit here and try to be happy in this relationship when I'm mentally moving on from it. My body is rejecting you. I don't want this anymore, or I'm not happy in it anymore. And if you're listening to this, Adam, um, I'm not saying this to hurt you, okay? I am just being honest, and I want nothing but your happiness. I want nothing but your success. And I appreciate all the time that we had together. I appreciate all the challenges that we overcame together, genuinely, because it was a lot. And I'm not even saying very much here, but like how much we overcame together, okay? It was a lot. And so in that breakup, I really got clear with what exactly I wanted. And guys would approach me, I really would, the moment I saw something I didn't like, I would remove them easily. I wasn't in a rush to meet anybody. And somebody came into my life that, not from a dating app, not from anything like that, somebody that had actually used my content and understood mindset and understood nervous system regulation, and somebody that I was very attracted to, and I was surprised by my attraction to them. And so I chose to entertain that. And so that is why that relationship ended. I really just got to a point where I thought for both of our happiness, it's just better if we take the lessons learned here and move forward. And we grew so much in those 4 years together, and again, overcame so much. And I think now both of us are in a position where in our next relationships, we really understand how to uphold boundaries. We really understand how to maintain healthy dynamics. We really understand how to overcome challenges and work through problems with somebody. Not that we didn't before, but again, when you have such a long history with somebody, sometimes the things that are said and the things that are done get etched into your mind. And while I could do the mindset work to overcome that, I think I just got exhausted. I just got exhausted. And I wanted to take the learning lessons and be able to move forward into my next relationship, really confident with what I was doing. And that's how I feel right now. I'm very confident and sure of who I am and exactly what I want and how I'm going to handle situations. And life is a constant evolution. We can create specific results, but it's also okay to outgrow dynamics, and it's okay to outgrow environments, and it's okay we need to. That's the whole point of this is we need to be the change. In order to create the changes we want within our life, we have to be the change. And so while ending that relationship was sad, it was ultimately the best choice. And and I'm very confident that Adam is going to be able to find somebody that he's going to be able to create a healthy dynamic with, because I know he learned just as much from that relationship as I did. And so in all of this, I think there's a part of me that fears judgment a little bit, because I coach on relationships, and I had a 4-year relationship that I'm saying I walked away from. But I really don't see it as a failure. Um, you know, when I look at my life and even how I handled that breakup, I was so regulated and calm. I actually helped him design a belief system to use at nighttime and meditations, and was so caring and at ease with all of it. And there's a lot of growth within me. And I know that whether it's this person I'm entertaining now or somebody else, I'm in a position to really set an example consistently where I don't dishonor myself or accept things I don't want, or I don't silence certain things, or, I just am able to consistently set a respectable example to create respectable dynamics. And I will say, this person I'm talking to now, that I'm actually in a relationship with now, is everything that I wanted from a physical type to a mental to an emotional. It's quite mind-blowing, but also not surprising, right? It's not surprising to get what you want. It's a normal thing. Um, but I hope this video, I guess, just shows that while I'm versed in these topics, I'm never going to claim to be perfect. And, I could have chose to stay in that relationship and persist through things, but I didn't want to. And I grew so much, and I was so appreciative of the lessons that I learned that I was ready to move forward. And so if you're in a position right now where like you want to fix a relationship, I'm going to tell you you can because I did it for 4 years, overcame so many things. Um, but if you want to move on and you know that you're very specific on what you want and maybe you just haven't met that person, that's also a possibility too. Don't ever feel like you're stuck in a situation. There's always so many different ways that you can respond to something. Don't ever feel like you're stuck in your scholarly success or in your career or with your health or with your body or with the amount of money that you create within your life. I personally have transformed all of those areas of my life, and it was solely because of belief work. Solely because of belief work. Even with the very heavy traumatic upbringing that I had. Was it easy? No. Am I going to tell you that it's easy? Yes, because you need to have that mindset. I was very disciplined, very consistent, and applied myself exactly the way that I describe on my channel. Daily breath work, daily meditation, sleeping with affirmations on, really making sure I'm addressing the things that need to be addressed. And so I know I took a little bit of a break from my channel just because prior to the breakup, there were so many things going on, and I really needed to place my focus there. And recently, I've been posting again for about the past month, and I feel a renewed sense of self. I've come out of things that were very difficult, and even in it, still was able to keep my focus on showing up for myself, taking care of my body, processing my emotions, and being open to love still. And so, whatever you're going through, I hope I set that example that you can overcome it. And I really put all of the answers on my channel. At this point, I am offering coaching. And the only reason why I offer that is because some of these things are really deep. You know, especially over the past 2 years, I've put a huge focus on really making sure you reparent yourself and you recontextualize those foundational experiences because definitely how my father showed up impacted me. And if I'm attracted to men and I had that example, that impacted the type of men I was attracted to or the types of dynamics that I was creating, as well as not having my emotional needs and wants met as a child. That had to be addressed. So if you're struggling with relationships or you're struggling with a particular area of your life and you're trying to approach this generally, I'm going to tell you right now, you need to be specific. You need to specifically address the things that you have struggled with and the things that you need to change within yourself. It's very much like going to the gym. So if I want to build my chest, but I'm going into the gym every day, changing what I'm doing, or like doing Pilates and arm workouts, I may see some general changes within myself, but I'm not going to see the results that I want. If there's a particular area of your life that you want to change, you really need to specifically address that area of your life and then keep a level of frequency over time with persisting with those beliefs until that change occurs. Much like working out, you provide the stimulus. I don't have to sit here and think about my muscles growing. As long as I continue to provide the same stimulus and I'm not changing up my workouts constantly, the muscle is going to grow. So if you want help figuring out what to address, I'm more than happy to help you. That is why I offer the coaching because some of these things are deep. Some of these things are uncomfortable to look at. And I'm more than happy to provide that advice to make sure you're not entertaining unhealthy dynamics. You're not living in self-doubt. You're not self-sabotaging. You're not undermining yourself or undervaluing yourself or feeling like you have to be stuck in life and accept things that you don't want. Because I can guarantee you that is not the case. Okay, so that is how belief work has transformed my life. I'm not some guru or anybody special. I'm just somebody that really had a relentless pursuit to figure out how to break negative patterns within my life. And this is why I've said on my channel over and over again, there's nobody to change but self. It all comes down to self-concept. It all comes down to your beliefs. And when you change, you're able to create specific changes within your life, whether that's with specific people, specific institutions, specific careers, your body. But the only person you need to focus on is you. Okay? All right. Love you. Have a good night or day, wherever you are.